we might get started. Thank you very much for coming at short notice to the special council meeting. If we just stand, if you're able to, for acknowledgement of country and our other service acknowledgements. City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Ramangeri and Narrandjeri people, the custodians, the land and surrounding waters where we live and work. Acknowledge their deep connection to the lands and waters and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. This respect is extended to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander.
City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. We respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, religions, backgrounds, cultures and beliefs.
We recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. Remember those who have lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice for service to our country.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless out to be an age of change, people, this city and beyond. Direct and prosper deliberations, honouring of your name, people.
And please be seated. We do have a number of apologies today. Councillor Burns is an apology. Councillor Quinton is an apology. As you know, Braden Mann has got 6 months leave and is an apology. And Councillor Mackenzie is also an apology. So thank you very much to all of you for attending, because if one of you didn't attend, we would not have a quorum tonight. The first item of business is in relation to the 2024 Local Government Association Ordinary General Meeting, which is next week. And if you're happy for me to do recommendation 1 and 2 on block, I'm happy to move it that way, because it's fairly simple, I think. Happy to move that way, Councillor Henderson. Thank you. And seconding Councillor Schofield on block. Yep. Does anybody have anything they want to say to recommendation 1 and 2?
I just want to say I think they're excellent recommendations and I think we should fully support them.
Thank you. Councillor Schofield? No. Does anybody else want to speak? No. All right. I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to item 4.2. And the recommendation for 4.2 is that Council endorse the draft 24-25 annual business plan and budget provided under separate cover for the purposes of public consultation. And the public consultation will go from the 16th of May to the 11th of June in line with the communication and engagement plan, which you're also provided with. Do I have somebody to move that? Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Just a point of order, Mayor, if I may. I'm not sure if
what is your point of order?
I'm just asking if we can go out of meeting procedures to discuss this, or do we need to move it first?
That's not a point of order.
Oh, okay.
Councillor
My
Karimba.
apologies.
So a point of order is if a councillor or myself actually do something that is against the regulations or the meeting procedures. No. So if you'd like to, if we can move this and then go out of meeting procedures, if that's the will of the elected members here. Sure. So we've got a mover with Councillor Henderson and a seconder with Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Do you want to speak to it? No? All right. Councillor Karimba would like to go out of meeting procedures. We need 2/3 of you to agree to that. So if you're happy to go out of meeting procedures, put your hands up. 3, not 2/3. So that doesn't pass at this point in time. What I'll do though is if we have a discussion, and if anybody wants to discuss anything for a greater length of time, I'll ask the floor if you can have a greater length of time, and you may want to try to go out of meeting procedures again once everybody's had their say if people think that it's necessary. But you obviously want to speak to the recommendation, Councillor Karimba?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I don't know where to begin. I spent the best part of 8 hours on the weekend looking over the audit committee meeting and all the words that were mentioned. And as much as this recommendation does show some of the issues that the audit committee have with this budget, I don't think that I would quantify the financial management or the legal compliance is okay, but the financial management under the risk assessment is low. In fact, there's a lot of things that the audit committee has raised in regards to our asset renewals. And I guess a question just quickly for Kelly, if you may. You even showed concern, I believe, that we are not evaluating our assets correctly and are not putting aside enough money. Is that correct?
So through the Mayor, so in regards to rate increases, I've said over a number of years that maintaining rate increases below or at CPI is not necessarily enough to cover our renewal programs. But in terms of the risk assessment, in particular, the risk assessments are written for these reports based on the recommendation. And so the risk assessment is around us going out to public consultation. There will be a much more detailed risk assessment once council gets to the point of reviewing its entire rating policy and its long-term financial plan and its funding requirements for that.
Okay, thank you. The Audit and Risk Committee, from my understanding, did not, and I think it was actually looking at the transcript, I think it was Member Richardson that actually said he would not recommend going out to the community with this budget. And there's a lot of other things in here that I think we really need to unpack before we go to the community. I think he actually said he was concerned about going out to the community with a rate increase on a sporting precinct, yet we have not signed a contract. And so we may be overrating our community. So why aren't we not waiting at least for that to happen? Or why are we putting that 1.2% in if that's the case?
Through the Mayor, so a couple of reasons, and I provided the same explanation during the audit committee. We received a quite clear and strong message from the chamber during budget preparation workshops that we needed to go out to council, go out to community, stating exactly what was happening with the budget, with the precinct, and what the funding requirements are for that. So we have included the additional index of 1.2 and included the commentary around the precinct to enable that to happen. In regards to the other comments, there was two somewhat contradictory comments. One was to not include the index for the sport and rec precinct, but also to include a higher indexation, higher than CPI, to cover expenses. So in terms of the risk to the community, if something happened with the precinct and it didn't go ahead at this stage, there's still a requirement that council may want to consider including that indexation to help get us on the front foot for making sure we have enough money to fund those renewal programs. So in terms of the risk to community, whilst it may be not used for the same purpose, there is still a very real argument for having rate increase at 6%.
Yeah, but isn't that misleading? Because we're asking the community on the consultation in regards to the sporting precinct and the annual budget as it exists, and now we're saying, but hey, we're not actually going to tell them if the sporting precinct doesn't go ahead, don't worry, we're going to use the money for something else. And I think you actually said something about we're playing catch up currently. Can you explain what you mean by we're playing catch up, please?
Yeah, absolutely, through the Mayor. So over the past couple of years, council has again wanted to have rate increases at or below CPI. There was even one year where we didn't raise rates at all. And so essentially what we have been doing is cutting the budget to try and cover things like depreciation and increases to costs. What that means is eventually it does catch up, and it does catch up with us, and there's a point where we can no longer absorb those costs. And so whilst there was a very real and global pandemic reason for council to make those decisions at the time, there does need to be a reckoning in terms of the volume of new capital projects that have come on board, as well as the increases in the unit rates to renew those.
Okay, so are we assessing our assets correctly? Because I believe we've now pushed out a further year some of our assets. I think it was stormwater, and there's some pretty big ticket items. And I was under the understanding that you said to us when I asked you if we look like we're assessing things correctly, you said we believe we are. But now I hear in the audit committee that we're actually pushing things out for another year. If we'd actually done those revals now, would we be looking at a much higher rate increase to cover those assets than what is presented in the annual, but in the report?
So through the Mayor, it again would depend on what the revaluations showed. So sometimes the asset revaluations go up, sometimes they go down, haven't gone down for a little while. So in terms of raising the revaluations themselves, we've been factoring in indexation for those, and the revaluations have been happening on a regular occurrence. So we're reasonably happy with the value that we currently have in our books. However, we can't continue to absorb those costs like we have over the past 3 years. And so with revaluations that come on either out of this year and next year, and then some major classes after that, especially when we get to land and buildings, there is going to need to be an increase above CPI.
Okay, so and I remember in the commentary or in the discussion of the meeting, you said something to the fact that the reason we haven't done some of these revals is a resourcing issue. And I would have thought, and I'm not telling you how to suck eggs, but I would have thought that something so big and so important as we're about to go and borrow a lot of money potentially for this precinct, we would want to really know the true position of council, because I'm really concerned that we're going to go and sign a contract for a substantial amount of money plus whatever else, and then these revals come in and they're not what we think they are, like what happened in Alexandrina, and we are in a really bad situation. So can you guarantee me that those revals are going to come in less, considering that the revals are actually on infrastructure, buildings? We know these things have gone up substantially in the last 3 years. Is the indexation you have presented, is that enough to cover the costs?
So through the Mayor, there's no way that I can guarantee you what we've included is going to be enough. We base it on forecasts, trends, and a number of other things, but there is no way until that valuation is actually done that we will know the true impact. And it will in fact vary between valuers. What I can say is that we have been revaluing our asset categories in line with our schedule, and where we've had to change that, we've had consultation and discussion with our auditors around whether or not there would be too much of a significant change if we push timetables around. And our auditors have been happy with the way we have presented and the reasons we've provided for moving those out, knowing that we're still meeting our legislative requirement to do those asset classes once every 5 years.
Okay, that's not the impression, I'm sorry, that I got when I watched the Audit and Risk Committee meeting. In fact, I think when you said that we'd push the assets out by another year, that there was actually silence in the room. And I took that as, you know, they were, and I believe they were actually saying they'd assumed that these had been done. In actual fact, they haven't. So I guess I'm really concerned that, like I said, we're about to, and I think you share that concern, because I saw your demeanour when things were raised, and I think you actually said we should be at around 8 to 9% when it comes to the reval. Is that correct? What we should be putting aside for assets?
So through the Mayor, I don't believe that was in regards to the revals itself. I was talking about a rate rise, and that's not just for the revaluation and depreciation, but in terms of the amount of increase that council has had through CPI, which was at around 8%, not like long ago, plus the amount of indexation that has been applied to capital construction or construction materials that are used for maintenance.
Yeah.
We're sitting somewhere, it's more between sort of 9 and 12 to 15%. So that's why the increases, that's why we're becoming less able to absorb any increases in costs going forward. And I can't say what the audit committee members were thinking by being silent, but if they had read their agendas, they would know when the revals had happened, because they get provided with the schedule.
Okay. I guess like you just said, 8 to 9%, we're going out with 6, including a sporting precinct that may not be realised. Are you concerned that if we, and I believe you are, that if we keep doing this, we're going to get to a point where we will not have a choice but to go double-digit rate increases to start covering for everything? And at that stage, we've entered into a long-term contract or this build plus whatever else we've got on the books. Are we going to be financially sustainable at that period? Are we just kicking the can down the road is my question.
So through the Mayor, the SCOSA report clearly showed that council over the past previous 10 years has been mostly sustainable. It's a little bit borderline at the moment, and that's because council is in a position where it's making some big decisions. And so without, particularly without SCOSA knowing all the details, which they're not privy to that information that you are, they have to make a call based on what our long-term financial plan looks like and unplanned changes that can come along during the year that make things either better or worse. And so with what we've suggested as per the report is that council continues to public consultation with what we believe is the current proposal. And that we have another, when we do the review of the asset management plans and long-term financial plans, which will start probably around September, that's the point in time where council consider its longer-term rating policies and whether or not we do need to make up ground and how much at a time. So I wouldn't be suggesting that we wait and go to double digits straight away. It'd be a stepped process where we can pick that ground up without overtaxing the community.
Yeah, and I guess my concern is that by September, as you said, we start these revals, but by that stage we've already signed a contract. We are in a different financial position to as we are now, and I know, and I'm pretty sure you said that it seems like we're going early on this consultation or on this rate increase, as the audit committee also raised. They are concerned that we're going early because we do not have a signed contract. I don't see, is there any reason why this consultation can't be prolonged for say another few weeks until we get some of this information and a bit, tied down so we actually know what we're going out to the community? Because I think there was even discussion of potentially going out for one consultation and then when we get the figures going out again. Is there any reason why we couldn't delay just so we get all our ducks in a row, I suppose?
So through the Mayor, the main reason in terms of delay is we're probably looking at a 2-3 month lead. And so we have to meet legislative requirements to have the budget adopted by a certain point. We also, essentially from this point on, we need to be out for consultation. We need to have a public forum. We need to come back, endorse. It's quite a long process. And so if we get to the point where we aren't adopting close to the 1st of July, it essentially pushes behind the whole Capital Works program and any other initiatives that council has wanted to start. So it puts council on the back foot in terms of business as usual. And I don't think we wouldn't make the legislative timeframes, I don't believe, based on the lead time for the precinct discussions, if you held off until then.
But the budget's doesn't have to be finalised till August, doesn't it? That's when that's the last time. That's 3 months away as to when it has to be. And I understand that there's things to do, but we literally barely have a quorum tonight, and we're going to approve a budget to go out to the community. And I'm really concerned that if more information comes to light in the next month or two, we're going to have to do a big about face. How does that look? Not to mention the amount of money and time that we've expended on doing such a process.
I'm not sure what your question is, Councillor Karimba.
I was just trying to allude to the fact that we've got plenty of time and we shouldn't be rushing this. This is arguably the biggest item that we're going to do. So I'm trying to get across to the elected members. And I think even you said, Mayor, during the Audit and Risk Committee that, the committee has, and I'll paraphrase here, committee has given recommendations to elected members not adding anything else to the budget, and time again, elected members add things to the budget. So even you are sharing concerns that the Audit Committee's message is not getting down to the elected members. So I'm wondering, what are we doing here? This information to me, and I understand all the stuff here, but the recommendations still go out, even with all these things that are unanswered. There's so many unanswered questions here, and we're still going to go out to the community. And I'm really concerned that we're going to send them a mixed message. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you, councillor Crembo. Does anybody else want to speak? Thank you, councillor Schiller.
Just, I've got a number of questions and a few just pointers. At the moment, we've gone from taking the capital, we had it at $11,700,000 contribution for the precinct placed in capital prior, and I know why it's been shifted into operating now. But do you think that we've clearly articulated to our community, because we're showing a $41 million deficit in our operating side of things, how we can clearly show that message in the budget to explain it, because I think the community will look at that operating deficit and be concerned without really fully realising that it's the figure that we're putting aside for the precinct. I would like to have seen it completely separated somehow, and I don't know how you achieve that. So it's just a comment. I'm quite happy for it to go out the way it is, but it could be perceived the wrong way by the community, just the way it's laid out.
Yeah. Angela, I might just ask Kelly to respond to that for you, because I think she may have some ideas.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So we have mentioned it in a number of places within the annual business plan itself, but more importantly, it will need to be quite there out in the forefront in the engagement material that will be prepared for the different consultation as per the engagement plan. So we will need to, we were planning on showing it not separate, but really explaining what that $5 million deficit is and why it's there, so that the community get a very clear idea of why we have a deficit of that size. So it will be forefront in the materials that are prepared for public consultation.
I've got more to go on with. Looking at the renewal as opposed to new capital build this year, without knowing what renewal is in the backlog, it appeared to us as councillors that the ratio between we've got very conservative new capital in there. We haven't got anything outlandish. We've got the Giles Street, which was one of the major ones, and Jagger Road. They're probably the two larger capital items that we have there, and we have a lot of smaller ones. So as a councillor, the balance between the renewal and new appears to me to look like a reasonable prospect. But reading what the Audit and Risk Committee have stated, I do have a little bit of concern about whether we didn't have enough focus on renewal. So, and I did slightly allude to that at a previous meeting. My question is, we've gone out and we're going to be going for a 6% rise, and the Audit and Risk Committee are telling us that we've had 3 years where we've been at or below CPI. Should we be, dare I say it, having even that 6%? Looking at other councils is a very low figure in today's terms with what other councils are doing. So is that figure too low?
Kelly?
So through the Mayor, based on the Audit Committee's feedback, they would be they have recommended that we reconsider what that looks like, particularly going forward. And in my opinion, yes, it is low, but I understand that council has to manage community expectations against financial sustainability, and that's the decision that that you're faced with. The budget has been put together based on the Chamber's feelings and the Chamber's comments around keeping the rate rises at or below CPI. And so if I could talk you all into it, I would talk you into more. But it's got to a point where it's becoming particularly important for us to have another look at that rating policy and how rate rises are determined, because we can't absorb the costs anymore.
So should we be making the tough decision and raising that figure now? Because we're talking about community expectation, but the reality of finance is that if we have been rating at or below CPI for the past 3 years, we have set us up, and we will set ourselves up to have a significant rate rise that is going to be very unpalatable to the community in 1 or 2 years' time.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I think that's a hard decision that the Chamber will need to make. From a financial sustainability point of view and from the Audit Committee's point of view, I would recommend that, yes, it needs to be higher.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Corimba. I'll let others who haven't spoken.
Could I just ask one more question of Kelly?
Sure.
With that question in mind, and if we were to adjust the figure this evening, would we achieve what we need to do by adjusting it now, or do we have to basically cop what we've done? We've been preparing this budget for the many months, and we've got to the pointy bit, and just feeling a bit squirmish about what future rate rises that could be there. So will we achieve anything by biting the bullet tonight rather than in 2 years' time or a year's time?
So through the Mayor, what you would achieve by doing something tonight would be to reduce future years' rate rises above CPI. So essentially, you would be starting the process that we have recommended when we look at the long-term financial plan of increasing rate rises a portion above CPI to get to a point where we've caught up. Starting it this year will obviously lessen the amount of years that has to go for and the increases in each year.
Can I just ask, Kelly, have you done any modelling on that?
No, because we didn't have a clear direction from the Chamber to have anything above what we had presented to date.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, Councillor Schiller?
I'm really going down the pathway, although it may not seem to the public, it may not seem like the right thing to do, but I think if we are going out in 1 or 2 years' time with a 10, 14% rate rise, people they're going to balk. If we bite the bullet now and we maybe go up to 7% or 6.9, it'll give us, more comfort into the future.
Kelly, if somebody was to make a recommendation to amend the current annual business plan and budget to incorporate an extra rate rise percentage in this year's budget to address some of the revaluations and the issues that have been brought up, what would you suggest that be?
So in terms of essentially the table that's on page 11 of the agenda, the catch up there that we're showing in terms of CPI and the rate rises, we're looking over the past 3 years at around 2.8%. Obviously that consolidates each year as well. So there's a catch up in terms of the 0.3 on top of the 0.8, etc. So based on just the years that have already been completed, you're looking at around a 1% increase over 3 years to just make up that ground. whether without doing modelling and forecasting it forward, which is what we would do when we look at the long-term financial plan, it's difficult to say what exact amount is required and how long it will take to get back to a better position.
So when you say 1%, are you suggesting that we make the rate rise 7% as opposed to 6% this year?
It would certainly go away to allaying the audit committee's concerns and definitely make an impact in terms of coverage for the revaluations and the additional depreciation and the additional construction type costs that we've incurred.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave that to the chamber.
I'm happy with 7, but you're indicating that that's catch up. We're at, say, 7.5. We will ensure that our future rate rises are much less, and this is we will have to be looking at this each year and making sure the wave of costs that are behind CPI, the CPI is level at the moment and hopefully won't go up. But last year, at December last year, it was 8.6%, and anyone who's delivering a service to council, they are charging much more than 8.6% above what they were charging at that time. They were probably charging double with their figures onto their costings, and that's the reality. We've got to think financially. Community, I know it's tough, but I'd rather make that decision now than to have them come back at me 2 years' time with a much higher rate rise.
Do you want to propose an amendment to that recommendation?
I'd like to propose that we raise it to 7.5%.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Schofield, a seconder. Councillor Schiller, I'll let you speak to that.
I think I've given and with the dialogue with Kelly, I think we all have heard what my rationale is behind that. So I'll let others speak to it.
Okay, Councillor Schofield, as you seconded the amendment, do you want to speak to it?
Look, it is a very hard decision to make, but given the fact that it is going to assist us in future years to come, or the next 2 or 3 years, I agree with it. I know that quite a few of our residents won't be happy, but then when you have a look at what we actually provide to our community and what our community is expecting us to provide, as somebody said today, once most of our sporting clubs raise the money themselves, they didn't come to council. Now the community expects council to provide everything for them, so they don't have fundraisers themselves. So I think based on that and trying to work it out and do the right thing by everybody, provide everything that everybody wants, somebody has to pay.
Yep. Sorry, Councillor Schofield, I've just realised that our council practice says that any member may move or second an amendment unless they have been the mover or seconder of the original motion. Given that you were the seconder of the original motion, you're unable to be the seconder of the amendment. So I do apologise to you and the council for that. Does anybody else want to second that amendment?
Sorry, I just have a question in regards to seconding the amendment. Can I make an amendment to the amendment?
You can vary the amendment.
Or vary it?
You can vary it with the permission of the person who moved it.
I agree, and I'm just with Councillor Schiller, I 100% agree with your concerns. What I'm really worried about now is that figure, and it pains me to say this, but I don't think that potentially may be enough. And I think part of the reason that we are not going out with a higher figure is because then the sports precinct comes into light. And that is my concern, that this is the reason we are keeping the rates as low as we can, to get
So,
through this project. So I
Councillor
guess,
Crimmer, I'll let you second it, if you second it first, and then you can speak to seconding
okay,
it.
yep, I second it.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so you can speak to it.
Okay, yeah, so I'd like to make a further amendment to the amendment.
You'd like to vary the amendment.
Vary the amendment, there we go. That we actually, because we're doing this on the fly now, this is not good governance, I don't believe. We really need some modelling around this. This is just, yeah, we really, so I would say that we defer this for 2 weeks. Would that be enough time, Kelly, to come up with some?
Councillor Quimber, you can't, the amendment can't, if you're varying the amendment, it can't change the amendment. It's just varying it. So if you're wanting to defer it for 2 weeks, that's a completely separate motion.
Okay, yeah, well then I can't second it as it is then.
Okay, so you're not seconding it. Does anybody?
Can I adjourn it? Sorry.
Well, we actually need to discuss the
Okay.
amendment first. Does there anybody else want to second Councillor Schiller's amendment? No, sorry, Councillor Schiller, your amendment has lapsed for want of a seconder. We're back to the original motion, the recommendation, which is endorsing the draft annual business plan and budget provided under the cover. Councillor Corimba's spoken, Councillor Schiller's spoken. I'll ask if any of the others want to speak before I come back to people who've already spoken to answer any questions that they may have. Councillor Kemp, did you want to speak to this?
Figures, that's all it's about, isn't it? It's just numbers. We've just got to get them right though. And our community is doing it hard and we need to take that into account. We just need to be a bit more managerial in the way we achieve things. I'll ask a question of the finance manager. You stated in previous times that you cut the budget. The current budget this year has been cut drastically. What figure did you cut it down to? Because it was around about 35,900,000. So what was it cut back to before you started rebuilding the budget for next year?
Through the Mayor, I don't have the data on me right now to be able to answer that question. I'd have to take that on notice to go back. But in terms of cutting the budgets over the past few years, essentially by having an increase to the rates below CPI, we have absorbed all the increases to depreciation and capital costs. So I would have to go back and find those figures, but it's a retrospective calculation.
Fine, that's okay. Excuse me. I've done some analysis of the last year's budget and this new budget for next year in the areas of our projects and what we do, project areas. And I find it's interesting that, for example, our public safety is minus 13.89% compared to last year. They've reduced the budget by $177,000 for public safety. So just to give you an idea that the information is there, we've just got to find it. One of the other things that I find interesting, that corporate services is gone up by 55% by 2,034,000. So to me, I'm saying, well, it seems to me that you cut the budget, rebuild it, and it comes out that you actually the budget's increased from this current financial year for the new financial year by 15%, 3 times more than CPI, and around about $5.5 million increase. Even though you cut it, you increased the budget by $5 million in expenditure. I haven't taken into account the revenue that comes in there that may offset some of that, but just shows that expenditure is up and it's high for this stage. Now, if we go back to the draft for public consultation, page 77, which is the uniform presentation of finances, we talk about the renewal aspect, and it's only 75%, but 5 months ago in December quarter review, it was 148%. We've reduced it by 50%. Now, I don't understand why, considering that we've got a higher capital budget this new financial year coming compared to this financial year. So how come our renewals has dropped by 50% in 5 months in your planning?
Thank you. So through the Mayor, in terms of the uniform presentation of finances, the 148.7% that's there as per the December budget review, and that's based on the original percentage in the asset management plans. I doubt that it will be that high given the March budget review and where we will end up with completion of capital projects. And that's been a trend over the past quite a while in terms of having the resources and construction materials to actually complete projects at the 30th of June. So it's based on a calculation done each year. So whilst it's good to compare trends over a number of years, the calculation for 24-25 is based on the amount that's in our asset management plans for renewal times what is in the budget. So it's a once-off calculation. It doesn't necessarily reflect a drop from the previous year, although we need to take it into account for trends.
We only can go by the figures presented to us. So sorry for not having insight as to what happens behind the scenes. But again, we'll keep working through the figures and try to understand exactly where our council is going in expenditure. And of course, keeping in mind that our community has to pay for this one way or the other. The audit committee, I find quite distressing the fact that they couldn't endorse for recommendation that this budget goes out to the community for public consultation. They didn't do that. That raises a bell, raises a flag, it raises a ringing sound that there's alarms are going off. Why did the audit committee not recommend this budget and annual plan to go out to the public? Because they have concerns. And here we are going to make a decision tonight to go out and go against the audit committee or even inquire about why the audit committee. They want more information. And I think they should be given the opportunity in how the administration manages to get the audit committee to come back again to give the information they need in order to that. I think it's dangerous in my mind if we go out to the community without the endorsement of the audit committee because they are lacking information. I think there's a problem. And I'm not quite sure how we're going to manage the reputation of council when this really breaks in the newspapers. So I'm not supporting this to go to community consultation just yet. I don't think we have enough information. I think there's a lot more questions than answers. And I think I'll just leave it at that for the time being.
Try and request that we go out of meeting procedure. If we really truly want to nut this out, we need to be having the opportunity not to just speak once.
Does somebody want to second that? Thank you. That's seconded. All those in favour? 2, 3. That's not 2. That's not 1/6 or 2. You need 4. Yeah, I'm sorry we haven't got the numbers to go out. But as I said, I'll be very lenient in terms of, as you can see, I've given people significant amount of time to do this. I'm just having a look at my notes from the audit committee and what they said is they can't provide a recommendation as don't have, I've got written down here, all the details, so couldn't recommend either way. So their recommendation wasn't to, they felt that they could make a recommendation to endorse or not to endorse. Either way, according to my notes. Have you finished speaking, Councillor Kemp? Yep, thank you. Councillor Schofield, you've already spoken, you were the seconder. Councillor Karemba, you've got some more questions.
Yes, just what you said there, the audit committee could not give a recommendation one way or another because they do not have enough information. Yet we are about to go out and endorsing this budget. So we are telling the community that as a council, we're happy, even though the audit committee, who are, I believe they're a required panel as part of the Local Government Act, they are saying we don't have enough information. What message are we sending to the community that we're not listening to our own? I'm just wondering, are we suffering, is there any potential reputational risk to council? Because this will get out now. We've got the newspaper here. This will get out that we are not listening to our own audit and risk committee. What is the issue with deferring this?
The issue, Councillor Krember, is that as elected members, we've been privy to significantly more information that has been commercial in confidence. So we've had a number of in confidence meetings relating to the precinct. We can't give that information to the audit committee. And so the audit committee are concerned that they don't have all of the information. However, as elected members, we had a special meeting last month where we signed a memorandum of understanding and the heads of agreement. We've got all of that information. The audit committee don't have any of that information. So they are concerned that they can't say either way whether this should be endorsed without having that heads of agreement information, which you do have.
Okay, so a question is there, and I believe that there is there a in confidence meeting with the audit committee coming up for the precinct?
I'll have to ask Graham, would probably know that, or Jody.
Thank you through the Mayor. The Risk Committee have reviewed the draft prudential report that was provided to Council. The updated draft prudential report that was provided to Council for their consideration to sign the HOA hasn't gone to the Audit and Risk Committee because it will still need a further update once the commercials have been finalised. There is planning to be a special Audit and Risk Committee coming up to review the March budget review. So we were looking to see whether at that time we could give them the copy that you've currently got of the updated draft prudential report. But again, most of that is around Council's risks, and those risks will remain the same until such time that a contract has been signed. Taking into account the comments about we couldn't put the budget until we've got a contract. We can't, most years, the capital budget, we don't have contracts before we have the budget. So Main Street Stage 4, we didn't have a contract in place when Council committed the budget.
Yeah, I understand that, but we're not committing $11.7 million either. It's the biggest.
That
This is
was
the-
9, so it's not that far off.
I understand, but so you're telling me there's no audit risk committee coming up next week in confidence committee meeting?
And that's not what I said. I said we
Well,
are
so that's the
trying.
question I asked. Is
Yeah,
there-
so I said
Point
we
of
are looking-
order,
Sorry,
just show a little bit of respect to
I
our staff.
I am. I'm just asking a question.
no speaking between you. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. I'll rule, Councillor Schofield, I'll rule against your point of order. Councillor Karemba is asking a pointed question, and obviously they don't understand each other, but just
Yeah.
please keep it respectful.
Yeah, sorry, through the Mayor, I said we are trying to organise a special Audit and Risk Committee meeting, and if we can, we will be putting that back to the Special Audit and Risk Committee.
Can I put forward or an amendment to the motion or a new motion? Or to defer? I'd actually like to defer this, if I may.
Till when?
Till after that meeting, that the audit committee has the meeting regarding the sports precinct. And actually, I'd like to defer it until after that meeting, elected members have a in confidence meeting with the full branch of the audit committee as well.
Are you
regarding the
saying you
sports
want to
precinct.
adjourn the meeting?
Yes,
Not defer the meeting, but adjourn the meeting until after the audit committee meeting?
yes.
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you. All those in favour? Oh, those against? That is lost.
I'll call the division, please.
All those in favour, Councillor Karemba and Councillor Kemp. Those against, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. That motion is lost. Councillor Schiller, you've got your hand up.
I know this is, I just would like, regarding the comments that were made by the Audit and Risk Committee, I can see that we do have far more information about the sports and rec precinct. So I'm sitting very comfortably with the way that's sitting, and I would be happy to go like against or to be not be concerned by the alarm raised by the Audit and Risk Committee. But I am concerned about if we go out at 6% with the knowledge that they've given us, that what it's going to do in future rate rises, and we will make the tough decision now, but in the future it's going to catch up with us.
I might just pose a question in relation to that. We are going out to public consultation, and I wonder whether or not those concerns about the rate rises being too low and having to play catch up in years to come could actually be part of that consultation, so that we have feedback from that from the public prior to actually making our final budget decision. Is that possible to do, Graham? The question was, is it possible when we go out to public consultation to put in there that the audit committee has suggested that the rates are too low and we may have to play catch up, and so we put that in, we get feedback from that from the public before we make the final decision when we come back from public consultation.
I feel it's probably something we could do, but I'd probably defer to, it's a little bit unusual. I'd probably defer to Kelly if she's sort of dealt with that sort of thing before.
So through the Mayor, potentially we could include some commentary in regards to that, but without knowing council's specific position, it would be difficult for us to pose questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion before Councillor Henderson closes the debate? Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I also noted the comment by the Audit Committee about a rate increase in advance of a finalised agreement for the Sports and Recreation Precinct. We've had good discussion about that and the reasons why that is. But in the absence of a crystal ball, I think it's the best we can do, given that we want to be as transparent as we possibly can to our community. And in being as transparent as possible, that is summarised in the draft proposal and included in the annual business plan. Also, if the current model for the Sports and Recreation Precinct doesn't eventuate as we currently plan, then we will certainly visit alternative options immediately in the future. I am also concerned about the asset renewal funding ratio, because it is below what our intended rolling average is considered to be required. However, I think there are very good reasons for that. We've had a tough few years. We've had COVID and then incredible cost increases following COVID. And I think that is only now starting to slow down. So our community and councils across the country have all had a difficult time in the last 3 to 4 years. However, we do need to address this when we start budget discussions in September, so that we do play catch up in the future. In terms of asset renewal, I'd also like to remind this chamber that we have had some opportunities in the previous 2 budgets to do some significant asset renewal. We did have some funding for 50% of a bridge replacement, which we decided not to go ahead with, and we lost that funding. So we've had opportunities there to improve our asset renewal ratio, and we haven't taken them. I think we've got a sound annual business plan to this stage, and I'd just like to remind the elected members that it's our community, our ratepayers, who put us in this chamber to make decisions on their behalf. So I think we owe it to them to sign off on this annual business plan, show it to our community and get their feedback on it at this point in time. Otherwise, we don't know what our community actually wants.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'll now put that recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. That is the end of the meeting. There's no confidential, so we close at 6:20. Thank you all very much. We have got a briefing session at 6:30, so we've got 5 minutes if you want to grab a coffee and have a little bit of a shake.